In order to take advantage of DNS in a Windows-type system, you got one of three choices. First of all, you can do broadcasting. Within the local area network itself, Windows computers, even the ones that use DNS, can do a broadcast to look for names. The second one is to use a host file. The old host file back from the internet 20 years ago is still alive and well and in your computer. And the third option is to use a DNS server. Let's watch all of these in action. Now I've got onto my Windows system here and I've done a search for the word hosts. That's plural, not one. And I found a file called hosts right here on this particular system, which is Server 2003. Down in Windows System 32, drivers etc. So what I'm going to do is open this up so you can take a look at it. It's never seen it before. And it's just a text file, so I'm going to open it in Notepad. There we go. And this is a host file. If you take a look at this point in the game, it only has one entry. Now remember what we're trying to do here. We're resolving IP addresses to domain names. So do you see 127.0.0.1? That's a very special IP address. That is known as the loopback. That is, it's pointing back to itself. So if anybody looks for the word localhost anywhere, the host file will say go to 127.0.0.1. It will literally point back to itself. Now the host file is ancient, but it still works even today. If you wanted to put something in here, for example, I could really mess somebody's life up by putting, I'll make something up. This is not a real address, so don't try it. Let's say that that is the address for my website. So I could set it up so that every time somebody types this, they will automatically go to my website. So even though the host file is obsolete, it still works. In fact, anything in the host file will override any other DNS stuff. So this is a place where if you ever start trying to go to a web page and you start going to some other really weird web page, always check your host file. Some versions of Windows will have a file called host.sam. That's for sample. And you can just take the word SAM off and you've got a functioning host file. The next thing I want to show you, and this is a Windows Server 2003 system, it has a DNS server built into it. So I want to show you the DNS server in action. Now, while I'm digging this up, I can't stress enough to you, Network Plus does not expect you to be an expert at anything on any kind of server. I don't care if it's a Novell server or a Macintosh server or a Windows server. If the word server is in there, you're not expected to know it. But I'd like you to see this so you have an understanding of what's taking place. Now, what we have here is one of many, many servers that can be within the Internet. And let me show you how this goes about resolving names. If you take a look right here, this is what we call a forward lookup zone. The forward lookup zone is the cornerstone of all DNS functions. This computer right here is a DNS server for something called Orion.com. Now, I've got to stress to you that the real Orion.com is handled by a real DNS server. This is simply an example, so if you go trying these addresses, you won't get too much luck. All of these extra folders in here are for a function called Active Directory, but what I'd like to show you is right over here. Here is a listing of the computers that are a part of this fake Orion.com. You can see right now I have three computers, server2003.orion.com, dreamweaver.orion.com, and director.orion.com. Any regular file is called a host file, and it has the letter A next to it. There's two others that you need to be aware of. One is called a name server. Name server is any computer that's acting as a name server for this particular domain. It's very common to have multiple computers act as a domain server for one particular domain. In this case, there's only one listing, server2003.orion.com. So there's only one name server. You could see two or three in here for real domains that need lots of backup. The last one is your SOA or Start of Authority. That is the one DNS server that is mostly in charge. This is the one where everybody else bows down to. If he disappears, then one of these other name servers will kick in, but he is the main one. And in this case, he is server2003.orion.com, which makes perfectly good sense because I only have one DNS server for all this, so it's going to be the Start of Authority and the name server. And look at that, it's even a host. Sometimes, if you know the IP address, you then want to figure out the host name. This is exactly opposite of resolving fully qualified domain names to IP addresses, and that's what we have is what's known as a reverse lookup zone. Reverse lookup zones are fairly rarely used, but you can see here are the IP addresses, and then they point to individual computers. There are some situations where that's needed. Most of the time we use our forward lookup zones. Now that we're back in our DNS server, first of all, let me show you what possibly one of the most interesting parts of DNS. You see where it says root hints right here? You see these? These are the actual root servers and their IP addresses. Remember, if the computer doesn't know what the DNS is for a particular system, it has to go to the root servers, so you better give all DNS servers the IP addresses for the root servers so it knows where to send its first request. These will actually automatically update on DNS servers. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at the cache. Let me see if I can find. Here we go. Here, you see it says cached lookups. These are all of the websites that this computer has been asked to look at. And it keeps a copy of it for itself. And then that way, if it ever needs to go look for them again, it already has all of these different DNS settings already set up, ready to go. So if I need to go back to learnkey.com, it will tell me the IP address for that particular